Hi, my name is Wendy Vigdor-Hess, author of Sweetness Without Sugar. And today we're going to make the oatmeal goji cookies, and we're going to make them more as an oatmeal raisin cookie. And there's a few different variations, but I want to talk to you about that as we go along. This recipe is on page 174 and 175. And we're just going to begin, and I've pre-measured out the ingredients so you can see what it looks like, and we'll put them all together and make them. So the first ingredient is rolled oats, and this is 1.5 cups of rolled oats, and I use the certified gluten-free oats. Bob's Red Mill makes this brand, and there's Gluten-Frida and some other different brands of gluten-free oats now, Lara's, lots of different ones that are available now, which is really great. And so these look like regular non-gluten-free oats, but they're gluten-free oats. So to this we're going to add some flour, and I'm using millet flour today, and we're going to use a cup of it. You can also use brown rice flour. The next ingredient is a protein powder, which just adds more protein to the cookies, makes them more nutrient dense, helps with the blood sugar balance. Today we're going to use hemp protein, which is more green. You can also use a Sun Warrior raw rice protein, and you can use a natural flavor or a vanilla flavor, so it will have the same color as a brown rice flour or a light colored flour. So if you have children, or if you don't like the texture or color of a green, you can make them with just a lighter color. There's also a nutribiotic rice protein. I have in the appendix section lots of different protein powders that are listed, and these are just two that I have on hand today. So I'm going to go ahead and use the hemp protein, and it's 1/3 cup. And to this we're going to add xanthan gum, which is a binder used in gluten-free baking sometimes. It's used in some of my recipes, not all of them. It's a very small amount. This is 3/4 teaspoon. If you're corn sensitive, because sometimes xanthan gum is derived from a corn-based product, so if you're corn sensitive, you'll want to look for guar gum. And also you want to look for an organic so that it's not genetically modified if you are using a xanthan gum as well. So then we're going to go ahead and add the sea salt. And it is 1/4 teaspoon. And this is just the pink Himalayan salt today, but you can use a sea salt, Celtic salt. So now that we've finished the dry, and we can see what that looks like, we're going to move on to the wet ingredients. And again, I've measured out some of the quantities here, so they're pre-measured. So the first thing we're going to start with, though, is the flax, the ground flaxseed. And this is already ground up, the flaxseed, but you can buy the whole seeds of flax and use a coffee grinder like this to grind them up. And you want it in this consistency, a really fine consistency. And this is going to help to bind the cookies together and hold their shape. And so what we're going to do is, this is 4 tablespoons of ground flaxseed. And you want to be sure that you smell flaxseed to make sure it's not rancid. It should have no odor. So if you purchase the flax seeds already ground, you want to keep them in the refrigerator or the freezer so they stay fresh. And you want to smell them each time you use them to be sure that there's no odor. And if you use them and you buy the whole flax seeds and you grind them yourselves, just do it a little bit at a time, and also keep it in the refrigerator or the freezer so it stays fresh. And so this is already ground, and I've got 4 tablespoons here, and I'm going to combine this with 3/8 cup of water. And the water is warm. It was boiled earlier, and now it's just a warm, it still has steam. So this is 1/4. So we mix the flax in the water, and we're just going to put this aside. As you can see, it's already starting to thicken a little bit, and we'll put that aside and we'll add that to the whole recipe later. In this bowl, I've already added 3/4 cup of the oil. Now I used walnut oil today, and you can use coconut oil or sunflower oil, any unrefined oil. I've put in the book as well as some ideas. You just want to be sure, if you're using the coconut oil, to measure it after it's melted. So you melt what you believe is close to 3/4 cup, and then measure it when it's melted at 3/4 cup. So this is 3/4 cup of walnut oil, and to this we're going to go ahead and add our sweetener, which I'm using a brown rice sweetener, and it's a 1/2 cup in the whole recipe. And I usually, one of my tips, which you may have seen in some of my other videos, is to add the oil to this first and measure your oil in the same cup that you're going to measure the sweetener, so then your oil comes out really clean and it doesn't stick. Just adds a little bit of ease to the recipe. And then to this we're going to go ahead and add a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, already measured. And you really can add the cinnamon to the or to the dry ingredients. To this we're going to add a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm using a 1/2 teaspoon measure, so that's why I'm using 2 right now, but it's only 1 teaspoon. And then those are all of our wet ingredients here. We'll go ahead and mix them together, and then we're going to add our flax mixture to this. So you can see the consistency is mostly oily, and then you can see some of the liquid. If you use a maple syrup, it wouldn't have this thick part to it, but it's pretty liquidy. And then to this, we're going to go ahead and add the flax mixture to our wet ingredients because it's thickened up. You can see it gets kind of gelatinous. You can see why it might help things stick together a little bit. And then we'll do one more mix of all of them together. So it still is mostly the consistency of oil here. And then we're going to take it and combine it with our dry all together. I usually like to use a wooden spoon, or you can use a spatula to get some of the last out, but whatever you're comfortable using. And just make sure that all of the dry ingredients get covered with the wet. So you can see when you mix it, it becomes a pretty firm dough, more like a traditional cookie dough. It's a little sticky, but mostly firm, where not a lot of it is sticking to the spoon. So you want to mix it well. And then we're going to go ahead, and you can either use tablespoons or just, I usually eyeball it, and when I am making it with my children, we just all grab some and put it down on the tray. But this gives you an idea of about a tablespoon size ball for the cookie, and this is already a pan that's been greased with coconut oil. Now I'm going to make some plain here, and then I'm going to add my raisins, and I put a few goji berries here too. So you can do all goji berries. I've made these with all goji berries and no raisins. They don't spread too much, so you can have them fairly close on the cookie sheet, and you can mash them down a little bit with your hand, and I usually just eyeball what's about a tablespoon size. It's nice to have the red in there. Sometimes the red of the goji gets a little bit burned looking when they're sticking out on top, so you may want to get them more in there so they're not sticking out as much, and then they have a better chance of keeping that beautiful reddish color. And as you can, they're a little bit brown on the top, and on the bottoms they have a little slight browning. You can brown them a little bit more. This was about 15 minutes, and you can do a little bit more so the bottom gets just a little bit more brown. But as you can see, they don't spread very much. And I also think it's neat, I had mentioned about the gojis. You can see this goji stayed nice and red because it was more tucked in. And some of the other ones, when they're on the outside too much, they get a little bit darker looking, more like a raisin. So if you want it to keep its pretty red color, you can put it into the dough a little bit more. Hearty. A whole lot of yum. Enjoy.